Yay.
Scott?
Yay.
Marshall?
Yes.
Raquel?
Yay.
Ward?
Yay.
April?
Yay.
And last but not least, Tessa.
Yay.
Thank you, everyone. The motion passes. With that, we will move on to item 4 on the agenda, which is the program manager's report. The MAG TSMO program manager, Jeff Jank, will now provide updates and a report to the committee. Jeff?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and ITS committee members. The first item on my report, as usual, is the federal update. I would like to invite Ms. Tony Whitfield, who is with the Arizona Division of FHWA, to provide this update. Tony?
Good morning, and thank you, Jeff. I have a few items this morning. The first, as you know, Federal Highway has published the notice of proposed amendment for the MUTCD. That was published in December, and the comment period initially closed March 15th. However, just yesterday, Federal Highway published a notice in the Federal Register extending the comment period to May 14th. So now there are 2 more months there to go out and review and provide comments on that NPA. The next item, USDOT has awarded Work Zone Data Exchange demonstration grants, and 13 grant recipients were selected, totaling over $2.3 million in projects. And congrats to MICDOT, MAG, and ADOT for being selected to receive $200,000 to extend the pilot Work Zone Data Exchange data feed. Next slide, please. The next item, USDOT recently published and is seeking comment on the Automated Vehicle Comprehensive Plan. This was just published this month, and the notice of request for comment also came out this month. This plan builds upon principles that are stated in the AB 4.0 document, and it is intended to help stakeholders understand automated driving system activities across USDOT. This comment period is open through March 22nd. And then the next item, Arizona Council for Transportation Innovation, also called PACSI, is having their virtual innovation exchange series this month. So they're inviting transportation practitioners to join in this series. It'll be a series of webinars covering a variety of innovation topics, from virtual public involvement to automated traffic signal performance measures and unmanned aerial systems and much more. So this series actually began yesterday, but it goes through the end of February. So you can register for these free webinars at that link that's provided on the slide. And then I actually just have one more item that's not on the slide, but I just wanted to announce that our new USDOT secretary is officially on board, and that's Pete Buttigieg, who is formerly the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. And that concludes my comments for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Next slide, please. This item is to provide an update of this upcoming call for projects for the SM&O line items. In last month's update, I provided a heads up that we were starting a series of a working group in preparation of this call for projects. Here are more details to share with the committee. We're planning for some bi-weekly meeting. purpose of those meetings are to discuss the call for project ground rules. We will review and revise the application forms as needed, as well as the evaluation tools. So this is a very important process that we will collaboratively agreed upon how we will go about the call for project. So I would like to encourage committee member to participate, and I know there are many meetings to come, but please do participate and speak for your jurisdiction. The plan is we're focusing on the Wednesdays because we've figured that Wednesday is kind of available for MAC. We will start from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. When it coincides with the ITS committee meeting, we'll have a nice 30 minutes break before the ITS. The first meeting we're planning to start on March 3rd. And again, this will continue until we exhaust all the to-do lists and estimate it hopefully before May of this year. Very soon we'll be sending out meeting invites to the committee members for all these working group meetings for the next 2 months. So this is the tip call for project preparations. And again, please do participate and speak for your jurisdiction. Next item, please. The next two items relates to the TSOP projects. I would like to invite Eric Nava, who is the overall project manager for the MAG TSOP project. But before Eric speak, I would like to provide a little context to this particular line item, which is the training of the TransSync for the TSOP project. So this, the TransSync is the new tool that we identified for the evaluation of our TSOP projects. And the initiative started last year, and when we contracted Kittleson to develop a methodology. And also back then we promised that we will provide a training primarily focusing on the consultants that will be conducting the TSOP evaluation and the jurisdictions. So with that, I would like to turn the next two items to Eric.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the ITS committee meeting. Pretty much everything Jeff said, and it's tomorrow. Next slide. No, I'm kidding. So yes, we've been working on for fiscal year 20 and 21, the redeveloping the performance evaluation and how we approach that with a new methodology. We've been piloting this new methodology for this current FY20 projects, and we'll be reporting on that in the coming committee meetings. Kittleson has been leading this effort in developing the methodology, and part of their task is to also provide a training workshop on using the new methodology, namely on the TransSync training or the TransSync software development. So the training is tomorrow, the 4th, from 9 a.m. to 12. We've invited all committee members, member agencies to attend for information, as well as the list of on-call consultants specifically for the TSOP projects. They've all been invited, and we have actually pretty decent attendance right now that have agreed to or have accepted the invite. What's to be expected is to go over the performance evaluation and how we're approaching that this year and the coming years. We are using INRIX data as well as the TransSync tool. The TransSync tool is being used for selected corridors, not all corridors, but just a select number of corridors. we'll be looking over the hardware and the software of TransSync. There's a TransSync D that is installed on the desktop computer, and the TransSync M, which is installed on a mobile device. MAG has purchased 4 licenses of TransSync as well as 4 iPads for the performance evaluation. So Kittleson will be going over the entire package as well as the how-tos and tips, things on how to start from TransSync D and move all the way over into you're on the field with a TransSync M device. Then we'll be going over the data and performance measures, how to export all the data and put it into the evaluation spreadsheet tool. And we'll be going over what will be reported using the TransSync data as well as the INRIX data. Again, it's tomorrow, the 4th, from 9 a.m. to 12. If you need to confirm that you received that invitation, please email me, as well as any of the on-call consultants that are specific to the TSOP area of expertise on the master on-call list. The next item I have, speaking of TSOP, for our FY21 projects, as of late last month, the projects were approved by the Regional Council Executive Committee. So we are now, we can now move ahead with the list of projects, and we have here the list of the 8 projects, 7 corridors plus 1 for the performance evaluations. Originally, we had 8 projects. The town of Gilbert had 2 separate projects that were within very close proximity of each other. We spoke to the town of Gilbert, and they agreed to go ahead and combine those 2 projects to be a single project, since they are very close within each other, and it made sense to go ahead and combine that project to be a single project. So we have this list of 7 projects. The first project, TS2101, is actually the performance evaluation methodology with Kittleson. So we are in the pre-scoping process right now. We are in the process of also selecting our consultants and assignments of those consultants to these projects. The consultants will be hearing from us most likely next week, pending a few decisions that we are working on with a list of consultants. And we'll be moving forward very quickly on the budgets and getting the projects up and running, starting again next week when we start notifying the consultants of the projects. And if you have any questions, you can go ahead and email us. And I believe this would be the next agenda item.
Thank you, Eric. Then next item is an update on the ITS training coming up. I would like to thank Omar for doing a great job negotiating with the consultants to arrange these meetings, as well as coordinating with the member agencies for the attendees. The 2 synchro training, there are 2 sessions of synchro training being planned. The first training is March 1st, 2nd, and the 4th. The second training is 8th, 9th, and 10th. So it's a 3-day training, basically, and it's limited to 10 persons due to the virtual nature of the training. In light of the high demand that we receive from the member agencies, now we're planning for 2 more synchro trainings. That's at the mercy of the availability of the vendor to finalize the schedule. Another training coming up is the IT for ITS. It's a 3-day training, and the significance of it is that the ITS are literally, traffic folks. Nowadays, with the ITS system, that there are a lot of IT components, the network, the gears and all that. So it is always necessary to be trained and updated. Again, this training that we have received an overwhelming response from the member agencies. There's more than 40 requests to attend this. The training again, 3 days is February 11th, 18th, and 25th. We have provided some flexibility for you to attend. Basically, you have the options for each day to decide which session, AM or PM, that you would like to attend. The AM and PM are the exact training, so that hopefully provides some flexibility for folks. So the next item, please. The last item on my report is an update on this RFP currently out for the bid related to I-10 Broadway curve traffic mitigation. And if I may just provide a really high level background information, that this effort is part of a MAG's initiative that's intended for a supplemental effort to the upcoming I-10 Broadway curve reconstruction projects. And so this project would look to coordinate and mitigate the traffic impact during the construction throughout the 4-year construction period. With that, let me turn it over to the project manager, Eric Nava.
Thank you, Jeff. And again, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the ITS committee. So as Jeff was mentioning, in response to the upcoming I-10 Broadway curve reconstruction project, we've been working very closely with ADOT, the ADOT team, as well as the local agencies that are in close proximity to the construction activities. We put out a request for proposals that is termed, or it's called the I-10 Broadway Curve Regional Traffic Signal Plans. But as Jeff was mentioning, it is in response to different mitigation strategies that we're looking into that go into traffic signals, but more than that as well. So this request for proposals is currently out right now. It was issued on January 20th. The proposals are due in about 6 days, so a week from yesterday at 1 p.m. The evaluation team will be taking these proposals and providing scores based on some evaluation criteria, and the decision will be made in early March, probably within the first week of March. The project goals, again, is really to look at the coordination of response in response to different phases of construction that will be occurring throughout the 4 years of construction, as well as developing the response plans to those different activities, be it large closures or lane reductions, weekend, weekday responses. So we're very excited to work with the agencies on this and look forward to all the proposals that will be coming in early next week. And with that, that concludes my agenda item.
Thank you, Eric. I think this concludes my program manager's report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jeff, Tony, and Eric. There are a lot of great updates there. If anybody on the committee has comments or a question, please raise your hand. Scott, you still have your hand up?
Yes, I have a question for Jeff on the IT for ITS 3-day training.
Yes, Scott.
Can you attend, you mentioned attend either session. You need to know in advance, like can you attend day 1 morning session, then day 2 PM session, then day 3 AM session? Or do you need to know in advance which session you're going to attend?
Absolutely. I know Omar is about to send out this detail to the committee member. Omar, do you have any update?
At the moment, we received the Zoom links for the meetings, which I will be updating soon. In regards for the AM and the PM options, if I understand correctly, there's no need to attend only AM session or only PM session. You can attend a mix of both if that works better with your schedule. However, it's the same session that will be provided in the AM on the first day and the PM on the first day. And it will be the same structure as that for the following weeks.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you for that question, Scott. Are there any others?
You can, but it's not the current version.
All right. I think that was just some background noise. All right. With that, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Jeff. We'll move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is the MAG-TIP call for projects overview. Patrick Stone, MAG-TIP supervisor, will be providing a detailed discussion of this, but Jeff Jenk will begin with an overview. Jeff?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee member, this line item is important in that we're starting up our TIP call for project preparations. And in the last go around 2019, many of you know that the MAG-TIP program is an important part of this preparations. Previously, the program was led by Terry Kennedy that we're all very familiar with, but with this opportunity, I would like to introduce, I hate to call him new Terry, but Patrick Stone, that Patrick has joined us from ADOT. And interestingly, as you might know, that Terry went back to ADOT, and so kind of we're swapping out talent in the gene pool here. We are now working closely with Patrick in regard of the budget, available budget, as you will hear, and also the overall process of the call for projects. With that, I would like to turn it over to Patrick.
Thank you, Jeff. Mr. Chair, members of the ITS committee, pleasure to be here this morning to present this item. A couple brief slides, if we can have the next slide, please. So I believe we've seen this previously. This is a nice kind of a tidy way to see how the call for projects progresses. Right now, you're looking at a schedule that would start potentially late in July, targeting finishing up January with regional council. As obviously as you see, there's some key dates that have been circled. The big one obviously is when the applications get put out on the street. When those applications are due, the review process that goes through the committee cycle, the air quality TAC, of course, that's a key piece. And then it moves through the committee cycle with targeting potentially January regional council for approval. Next slide, please. So what I wanted to do was provide a brief overview of what myself and my team do in relationship to a call for projects. The first thing, and probably one of the most critical pieces, is we actually work with the programmatic areas to have that conversation of, is it time to do the call? What are we looking at for timelines? You could see in the previous slide where we kind of have the schedule outlined. And the one thing we actually do, which actually makes sense, hopefully, is we start with when we target the regional council action and then work backwards through committee cycles to ensure that we have enough time built into the process. The one thing I really do want to emphasize in this slide is the second bullet point. 2021 is going to be a very unique year. We have both a new TIP that's being developed as we speak, as well as a new regional transportation plan. And both of these items currently are targeted to be approved at the December Regional Council meeting. Given that, one of the things we're looking at, and this is to my third bullet point, is potentially adjusting the calls for projects that would normally have been done in late July and potentially sliding those back a month or two. And the goal was to ensure that we don't have the call for projects running right when we're trying to approve a TIP in a new RTP. We want to make sure stuff doesn't get lost. There's also some additional work elements on my team that if we have a call for projects and those new listings for those projects being developed at the same time we're doing the TIP, it does create some confusion, some additional work. Nothing's decided on this item at this point. The one thing we're looking at is potentially moving just the approval back 1 month to February of 2022 for regional council approval. Kind of going to see how things go. As Jeff mentioned earlier in his program manager's report, those biweekly meetings, I think by the time those meetings kick off in March, we should have some clarity to the schedule and what we think will be the appropriate timeline for this call. Next slide, please. Finally, the important part, the dollar scenario. Want to run through real quickly how we do this. The SM&O plan was quite unique. I was actually familiar with it from my time at ADOT, so it's interesting getting to see it from a MAG perspective. But the original SM&O plan, phase one, covered fiscal years 2020 through 2024. As Jeff mentioned in that previous call that was done in 2019, it was looking at the first 3 years of the SM&O plan. So we're looking at 2020 through 2022. The intent this go round is to then look at 23 and 24. What my team's done, want to give a shout out to Aisha Alam, who works on my team. She did a lot of the work, and I want to credit that. We looked at what had been done, what had gone through the previous cycle, what was programmed, the commitments that were made, kind of subtracted that out from what we had originally made available in the SM&O plan. And kind of that delta is what becomes the call for projects for this cycle. So what we're looking at, as you can see in the third bullet point, is that we have the 2 years, 23 and 24, with a cumulative total of $24 million. And then this would come, one thing to emphasize, it's not the full amount of funding that's in the remainder of the SM&O plan, but this is for the competitive program, which is what the call for projects deals with. But anyhow, so we're looking at competitive funding in programming buckets 1, 2, and 3. And with that, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, that concludes my presentation. I would, of course, be available for any questions the committee might have.
Thank you, Patrick. Are there any questions from the committee? All right, looks like everyone's going to hold their questions until we get those meetings begun. Thank you again for that overview, Patrick.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is MAG Performance Measurement Program. MAG's Transportation Performance Program is responsible for ensuring compliance with federal regulations, including performance-based planning, programming, measures, and targets. The program maintains data sets, maps, and tools useful in project-level evaluation. MAG will provide an overview of the program, project evaluation, principles, and data sets available for use in calls for projects. And I'd like to invite Ted Brown to present this item, and Jeff is going to provide a brief overview before. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee members, it's my pleasure to introduce our, in my mind, still new program manager for the Transportation Performance Group. And many of you who have worked with MAG for a long time, you're probably very familiar with this name, Monique De Los Rios. Monique was the previous program manager for this Transportation Performance Program, and she has since retired. Today, it's my honor to introduce the new program manager, Ted Brown. This program is I work closely with the ITS committee in the past, especially in the TIP call for project. Again, back in 2019, as you remember, as we develop our evaluation tool criteria, and finally we have a spreadsheets. I mean, all those were done and facilitated by Brian Rubin of the Transportation Performance Group, and now Brian is reporting to Ted. So today you will hear Ted present and provide an update of what this program functionality in terms of the MAG overall function. And also in the future, I think I would certainly be inviting Ted and Brian back for some of the more specific TIP call for project related activity. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Ted.
Thanks, Jeff. Mr. Chair, members of the ITS Committee. As Jeff said, my name is Ted Brown, here to talk about MAG's Transportation Performance Program. Although relatively new to the performance program, I'm not new to MAG. I've been around for over a decade in various roles, and I'm excited to talk today about our performance program. Next slide, please. So a little context to start. You know, the performance program at MAG formally began in 2009. It was initially conceived to handle congestion management planning and system performance reporting. Since that time, the program has expanded its scope to include reporting on FMS data, third-party speed data, and a variety of other transportation-specific metrics. With the introduction of MAP 21 and the FAST Act, the scope of the program expanded again to include federal performance targets and target setting activities. The program in general is very much rooted in federal requirements, both from a performance measurement standpoint, but also from the planning and programming standpoint. The federal mandates continue to evolve and require more and more of our work to be performance-based. To be very clear, when I say performance-based, I mean a process that uses quantitative data to help inform and make decisions. Those of you who have been in this arena before will recognize the graphic on the screen. It's taken straight from FHWA's Performance-Based Planning and Programming Guidebook and gives you a quick peek of the life cycle of planning, programming, and implementation. Next slide, please.
Good.
So to do performance-based planning and programming, you need data, lots of data. Some of it is specific to performance, some of it is more general, but on the screen I've listed the main data sets that we use, starting with the National Performance Management Research Data Set, or NPMRDS. That data set's provided by FHWA and is the basis for all of our FAST Act calculations. Next, we use FMS, a series of monitoring devices maintained by ADOT. It's really unique in its ability to deliver HOV information, which we really can't get anywhere else. We use our ridership data from Valley Metro, and then we have INRIX and HERE data as our third-party data providers. You may wonder why these data sets in particular. Really, in the world of performance measures, there's a clear firewall between model data and observed data, which is why we tend to use these observed data sets the most. However, when we think about performance-based planning and programming, there are certainly applications that do lend themselves to using model data. Next slide, please. So we have our data. How do we use it or apply it? Our first stop is going to be the Arterial and Bridge Needs Research Platform, or ABNA. And ABNA really is a kind of a central repository for transportation data sets from across MAG. It includes things like model volumes, pavement condition, employment and population statistics, crash rates, level of service. We've got a composite transit index there, and then a number of reliability measures like TTI and PTI. That platform also allows users to submit projects and then instantly receive the underlying data related to that area. As you can see in the somewhat small graphic to the right, I've drawn a line and it's giving me an overall score for the project and then the data to go along with it. Of course, you may be wondering about where that score comes from. This project was developed with the help of a technical advisory group that consisted of one representative from each member agency. Approved by the Intergovernmental Committee. They helped develop both the criteria and the weights. I should note, though, that we have always developed this platform with flexibility in mind, and changing the metrics or the weights used is not really a Herculean task. This platform should be rolling out to member agencies in the next few weeks, and then we'll be rolling out a public version shortly thereafter. Next on our list is the project level scoring automation. As most of you know, we're in the midst of developing a new RTP, and for that we did a call for projects, which resulted in over 1,300 projects coming through the door. Building on the tools that we developed for ABNA, we modified our setup and added additional criteria at the direction of our policymakers. This new platform can churn through that data and score hundreds of projects in just a few hours. There's a real symbiosis between this platform and the ABNA platform, as many of the criteria added can be ported as needed. We also have our performance dashboard, where you can find a visualization of the data sets listed on the last slide. I'll freely admit that that dashboard is starting to show its age a little bit, and we are currently in the process of updating the back end to be a little more dynamic. So those are the existing tools that we have. We do have a few things coming down the pipeline. The first one being an FMS viewer. We took some time earlier last year to convert our largely spreadsheet-based process into a script-driven process, which not only saves us loads of time, but it also allows us to leverage that data in additional ways. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, the dashboard is being reworked to be more than just a map. It's going to include all of our federal targets and some additional performance reporting. Next slide, please. So as a planning agency, we're always looking to the future, trying to read the tea leaves for what's coming next and how we can get there. My colleague in the performance group, Brian, recently completed a study with the help of Cambridge Systematics to look at evaluation best practices from around the country. We looked at just about a dozen other MPOs, kind of broke down their processes, their calculations, and tried to find areas where we could immediately impact or make improvements. The final document that they produced contains not only some really fascinating insights into how others are doing their work, but a number of recommendations for MAG. I can't go into all the details today in the time I have, but the report is on the Transportation Performance website. A link to that is on my last slide. To summarize it briefly, though, we need to move to the top right as time and ability allows. You know, MAG has really lived in the needs-based assessments, mostly qualitative, somewhat quantitative, and we really want to try to get to those outcome-based quantitative measures. Another deliverable from this project is what we call the menu. It's really a list of criteria that's being used by multiple other MPOs, sorted by a variety of factors, but including applicability and the level of difficulty it would be for us to implement it. To build on this just a little further, you know, the development of this next RTP gives us a great opportunity to make some systemic changes in the way that MAG does business. And as we lean towards flexibility, we'll need better ways to prioritize and analyze our projects for funding. Next slide, please. With that in mind, I just want to touch on some of the principles that our program feels are going to kind of guide our next generation of evaluative tools. The first being normalize your data. To put more simply, we need to bring things to the same scale to provide an easier comparison. We also need to provide context on our data. So, you know, if I say your project got a 4, that's not very helpful, is it? What score did everybody else get? For what? You know, how do those scores change over time? We also need to document our methodology, and I don't just mean the math, but also the criteria we're selecting and why we're selecting it. And also sometimes, very importantly, the criteria we are choosing not to use can sometimes tell an equally interesting story. We also need to bound our qualitative data. And, you know, really, we understand that you can't base prioritization strictly on quantitative data, right? You're going to end up with projects that nobody wants or that nobody wants to fund. But that doesn't mean your qualitative data can't be more efficiently used. For example, if the question is, does the project promote advancement of regional operations and management capabilities? We should ask ourselves a few questions like, is that a yes or no question? And if it's not a yes or no question, how much of a scale do we need to make a meaningful distinction between the projects? And if we decide on something like a 0 to 5 scale, what does a 5 look like and how is it different than a 4? You know, these kinds of small changes can help improve the overall defensibility of an evaluation and lead to better outcomes. We also need to leverage our technology. I touched on a few examples earlier, but we have so many tools available to us now, and we need to make sure we're doing a good job both putting them to good use and integrating them together to streamline our processes. And finally, we need to link our criteria to our RTP goals. Everything MAG does or funds should be moving us closer to achieving our regional goals. It's going to become increasingly important to ensure that we're linking the criteria we select for our project evaluation and selection to these new RTP goals. Next slide. If you want any more information about our program or any of the tools I've discussed here today, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're always happy to chat. I'd also like to note that late last year, we published our first annual system performance report. It provides our federal targets, some project and corridor specific analysis, and we've thrown a few fun things in there too. We've done an analysis on traffic for a Cardinals game. And finally, the new dashboard isn't quite online yet. So on the far left side of the slide, you're seeing a bit of a sneak preview of what's to come. So don't be too disappointed if you click on it and it takes you to the old map. It is coming soon though, I promise. Mr. Chair, that completes my presentation and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Ted. Are there any questions from the committee members? All right, looks like you covered everything. Thank you very much, Ted. All right, with that, we will move on to item 7 on the agenda, which is the SM&O Regional Fiber Maintenance Support Update. As you know, as part of the MAG SM&O plan, a funding strategy for regional operations was identified for regional fiber maintenance support to the local agencies. This project provides $100,000 a year for FY21 through 24. A task force has been created to manage and determine the best use of this funding. MAG staff will provide an update regarding the task force decisions and next steps. At this time, I would like to invite Ryan Gish with MAG to present this item. Ryan?
Thank you,
It's
David.
going to be me. Oh,
I was going to say, go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry about that.
It's all right. Ryan gets to dodge the bullet this time.
Yes. That's on recording.
So this is in regards to, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members of the ITS committee, again, for allowing me to present this agenda item. So as the summary provided, this is in response to the SM&O plan identifying a strategic funding project and strategy to look at the regional fiber upgrade supporting maintenance support. We're reterming it as an upgrade support to this. The SM&O plan identified this project to develop to look into and develop a qualified vendor list, a MAG on-call services contract to help local agencies in the regional fiber maintenance support on ICM and priority corridors. Another piece of this as well was to support local agencies to ensuring reliable fiber communication using funding of $100,000 per year from FY21 to FY24. Both Ryan Gish and I began a task force made up of ITS committee members and agencies to look into, to develop a task force in looking into how this project would potentially work out. And so we've met 3 times, and we met as early as last week to discuss this project and the next steps moving forward. So the task force roles and responsibilities was, again, to determine the services needed for this regional fiber communications maintenance and upgrading, as well as determining the list of projects and needs that can be addressed with the money for ITS fiber for regional communications. So in terms, so we saw this as 2 different items that we wanted to address with the task force. And the first one was the regional qualified vendor list. So based on the first 2 meetings that we had with the task force, a lot of their input, a lot of very good input from the task force was that there was already a lot of various methods and ways for agencies to address the needs of, say, fiber maintenance or emergencies, fiber cuts, things of that sort. That was already done in various methods, from using, say, the ADOT list of qualified vendors, or they may have their own list of qualified vendors, or they had a list of vendors that they previously worked with and were able to gain access to them through some various means from their own local agencies. So at the time right now, we're seeing no immediate need to develop a vendor list to be developed by MAG. Maybe repetitive or redundant of what is already being accomplished, as well as not knowing exactly how often this vendor list would be potentially used. So the recommendation from the task force right now is to hold off on this immediate need for a qualified vendor list for regional fiber communications needs. The other piece to this project is how to use the funding. So the funding we saw as a fiber communication support mechanism to address various upgrade needs for fiber communication, specifically towards regional communications. So if there were various needs between agencies that a fiber was cut and just has not been able to be fixed, or that there's a gap or last mile connection of some type, we were hoping that this funding would be a great mechanism for that use. So the funding structure, again, is $100,000 per year from FY21 to FY24. So we're currently in that first fiscal year of this. In speaking with the task force and in their recommendations, we saw the opportunity to use this funding in two different categories. One would be an emergency type of project, and the second category would be a prioritized or priority type of project. The split of using this money as of right now for this current year, just trying to see how the money would potentially work, is 20% of this $100,000 for FY21 would be used for these emergency type of projects, and the remaining 80% for a priority type of project. So the first emergency type of project, we would be developing essentially an application form. And the purpose of the application is to help us identify what the emergency type is. And it's really, again, the funding support for local agencies in ensuring reliable fiber communications. There are various types of emergencies that may potentially come up, say a node or control box somehow was, it was a car accident or something, or some fiber cut was happened overnight for, again, various different types of reasons. From an emergency approach, it would be asked of this particular project in the task force to recommend a funding to repair that emergency type of project. So there would be this application. Application would be reviewed and approved by MAG staff. That would be Ryan Gish and myself. And the agency that would fix this type of fiber cut or emergency type project, they would repair it themselves using their own vendor or their own approach. It could be even the local agency staff that may be fixing this type of emergency repair, and the project would be reimbursable. So they would come with the application, an approved application form, and MAG would be able to reimburse them on these things. And again, the purpose of this is these emergency projects that are of regional impact. So neighboring agencies that fiber or communication is lost, or something that affects that regional communications. Past projects within this current fiscal year of FY21 are eligible, since we are in the midst of this FY21 project and 20% of the current funding is available. We would allow for this current fiscal year to be reimbursable if eligible and the application is approved. The second type of project or project category is these priority projects. The task force, again, will be developing a list of priority projects, and we will prioritize these list of projects over the next current fiscal year and the preceding fiscal years in the lifespan of this particular project. So the list of priority projects may be certain types of projects that have just not been able to be addressed either through a local means or through partnering means for various agencies. That is a priority that also helps ensure the reliability and the redundancy and the resiliency of our communication network amongst various agencies that do affect the regional means of communication for traffic operations. So these type of projects, we are currently working on developing a list of these priority projects. So I encourage anybody to continue attending the task force, and I'll mention when the next meeting is. The projects, again, will be reimbursed. So we would need a champion agency to take on a particular project that was included in this prioritized list of projects, and they would be reimbursed, and we'd be using a similar application form as previously mentioned with the emergency type of projects. So in the next steps for the task force, it is to develop this documentation for MAG's means and purposes, is essentially what is a scope of work to define what these two categories of projects are. This would be reviewed by the task force to make sure that it is within our understanding of the purpose of this funding and this particular project from the SM&O plan. The other thing that we'll be working on as well within this month is an application form. And this application form will again serve two purposes. One would be of the emergency type as well as the prioritized type of project. And again, this will be distributed to the task force for review. Our next meeting is anticipated to be Tuesday, February 23rd from 9 to 11. seems that we've been working out to have a meeting on the last Tuesday of every month. Soon after this, we may not need as frequent of task force meetings, depending on the final approval of the scope of work and the application form. And then we'll be able to begin moving forward with these prioritized projects and emergency projects. And with that, this concludes my agenda item. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, I'd like to open it up for any questions from the committee. While we wait, I did have one question, Eric, regarding the emergency funding and the 20K. Given that there's an application process, is the plan that those will be reviewed and looked at on a first come, first served basis? Or given that they will be reimbursable, will those be held till near the end of the fiscal year so that all potential applications have a fair shot at the limited funding?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for that question. That's a very good question. And as of right now, when speaking with the task force, it was initially discussed as a first come, first serve.
Okay. All right, looks like we don't have any other questions from the committee members.
And Mr. Chair, this is Ryan Gish, if I may.
Yes.
One other part, we did talk about that split as an 80-20, and this is we'll say it's flexible. So as each year as we come along, if we found that more money was put into or more money needs to be shifted over towards the, I guess, the emergency portion, we have the flexibility to be able to move that.
So, Mr. Chair, this is Jeff. I think I have another question, but just want to confirm that it seems that in the very beginning of the planning process, we were talking about potentially a regional a list of on-call consultants. So is it fair to say that we move away from that idea?
Yes, this is Eric. And yes, the answer to that, yes, is we would be moving away from that right now. We saw the task force saw no need for that particular vendor list at this moment.
Great, thank you.
All right. With that, we will move on to item 8 on the agenda, request for future agenda items. If any member of the ITS committee has a topic or issue that you would like to raise for discussion at a future meeting, please go ahead and indicate by raising your hand in the chat window or chime in. I'll give you a moment. All right, with that, we will move on to item 9, which are comments from the ITS committee members. So I would like to invite members to share information related to ongoing ITS-related activities in their jurisdictions. I'll be polling each of you in turn. If you have something to update, please take this opportunity to do so. I'd like to begin with Susan Anderson with ADOT.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Just to let you know, the TSMO division at ADOT is actually working now to turn on some of the ramp metering within the valley. We've noticed that traffic volumes have come back and have started to see a need to have that. A few corridors are starting to light up with that. You'll see that along parts of I-10 and I-17. So just a heads up. Also, I do know that John Roberts, I believe, has reached out to many of you and asked for a response on getting the INREX users group established, and we've had a very good response. Lots of agencies interested in that, so you'll hear more about that being established. That fits very well under the EDC 6 implementation phase that we're working on as well. So thank you for those. And finally, I've got an email from Bruce Dressel this morning. I believe, Eric, you may know more about it. Our ADOT broadband office is trying to develop a map of all fiber conduit and fiber within the state. I believe there's been a request maybe to the local agencies if they would be able to share that type of information as well. They're looking for Google KMZ files. So they have a lot of this information currently in PDFs or hard copy form, but they're now trying to get it in a digital format that might integrate with our MPD's group's ESRI format. So just a heads up that agencies may hear from ADOT for that request out of our broadband office. So thank you all. That's all I have.
Thank you, Susan. Hugh, anything to report from the City of Goodyear?
Just note that we've kicked off 3 of our federally funded, I guess I call them technology projects. I guess they're not fiber related, but they're CMAC projects. We just had the kickoff meetings for all 3 projects yesterday, and we're looking forward to getting those projects moving through the design process and into completion. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Tricia?
No update from Mesa today.
Thank you. Alan?
Good morning. I do have one update. Our Camelback Road fiber project between 59th and 91st is almost complete. All the fiber is down or on the ground, and it's just under the testing at the moment. So our Camelback Road is done. It's we're adding 3 more miles of fiber in the city. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Albert?
Nothing to report.
Srini, anything from Chandler?
No updates, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Hong?
No update. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce, anything from Phoenix?
Nothing from Phoenix for today.
Thank you. Yin Yang?
Nothing to report.
All right, for the City of Tempe, one small update. We have recently had a couple retirements in our traffic operations group. So we've had some promotions, and as a result, we have an opening for an ITS technician, 1 or 2. So that is currently open and is on the street for anyone that's interested. Steve, anything from Peoria?
Nothing from Peoria this time.
Scott?
This week, Pinal County will be advertising an engineering position that worked directly for me, performing a variety of traffic engineering work. If you know any good candidates, then contact me and I can provide them with specific information about the position. Thank you.
Thank you. Marshall?
No, I don't have any updates, but I have a question for ADOT. When do they plan to roll out valley-wide what they call smart ramp metering? Because if that was in place, you really wouldn't be turning things on. It would be making those decisions.
Hi, Marshall. Thanks for the question. We are currently looking, it's depending upon a lot of our funding availability as to when we can make an upgrade to the ramp meters. So we are currently looking at that program now, and as we can, we're upgrading the locations that we have funding for. That's more out of our maintenance side right now, but it's little by little right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Raquel?
Nothing from Apache Junction.
Ward? Ward, anything from Avondale? All right. Mike, anything from Town of Gilbert?
Nothing overly exciting, but we're about finishing up our last comments on our TSOP project, and we've been applying the solutions that we came up with in our fiber optic strategic build out to many projects, and we have a lot of fiber going in, but nothing overly exciting. That's about it.
All right, thank you. April?
Hello, everyone. So quick update for the 2 adaptive projects, Bell Road Phase 2 and all of Dunlop. We are probably 2 weeks out from having a final selection. We're in negotiations right now. And then also the RADS upgrade project is also in the same situation that we should have a vendor selected in the next couple weeks. So more to come on those projects.
Glad to hear. Tessa?
Nothing new from El Mirage.
All right, and last but not least, Mr. Willett.
Nothing to report from Buckeye. We're same status quo. Thank you.
Good to hear. All right, with that, our next meeting date, the next meeting of the ITS committee will be held at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, March 3rd at 10 a.m. and that will continue to be held virtually. And thank you everybody for your attendance. Look forward to seeing you all next month virtually. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.